Customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DiJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you.
Welcome, everybody, to the Customer Service Revolution podcast. Thanks for being here. We're thrilled that you're with us today. This is episode 26, where we will be reviewing week number 3 of the Customer Service Revolution Conference that is being held virtually this year over the 5 Thursday afternoons in October 2020. And the reviews so far have been outstanding, and we have some amazing content to share with you today. My name is Dave Murray, and I'm the senior consultant for the DiJulius Group. And I am joined today by our president, CEO, Chief Revolution Officer, Chief Visionary, John DiJulius. How are you doing today, John?
Hey, Dave. Great to be with you. Another exciting week. I don't know. I keep on thinking it can't be possible, but this week 3 seemed to have topped them all. So that's no easy feat.
You're right. Each week, it just keeps getting better and better. And just on a side note, one thing that I've noticed about having our first ever virtual conference after doing these for so many years in person, it's really cool to have that chat room and see that live feedback, see what people are taking away and sharing with one another and what they want to hear again. To see that live as our presenters are presenting it, it's really cool to see what people are talking about in the moment.
Yeah, 100%. And what a week. Week 3 of week 5 was myself, the Marie, Dr. Paul Bizjak, the one and only Jesse Itzler, and Darren LaCroix. What a lineup. Good diversity, hit on a little bit of everything in all areas of business, wellness, motivation. I was inspired.
Yeah, this particular week was so cool and also so useful because when you think about it, I mean, Jesse Itzler and his story, it's just inspirational, right? It's just cool to hear. And some of the things we're going to share from him are it will inspire you to go out and try new things. But then with Dr. Paul and also Darren, I mean, people need that now. We all need that now. We need to focus on wellness with what we're going through with the pandemic. And Darren gave such great tips about doing virtual presentations, holding those virtual meetings. And we're all in that boat right now. So no matter what your profession, no matter what you do, chances are you're on some sort of Zoom or GoToMeeting or something where you are virtually interacting. And we all need to focus on being better there.
And even for the people that are back to work, maybe back in their office, their clients are virtual. So you need to know, how to adapt for them, even when it's not necessarily your world.
Very true. So before we dive in, I just want to remind our listeners that they are listening to the Customer Service Revolution podcast. And if you're not subscribed yet, you can do that wherever you go to find your podcast, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever you go, we're there. And also, we'd love to hear your feedback. So please give your comments. Let us know what you like. Let us know where you think we can improve, because we're doing this for you folks. We want to share this content and make sure that it's something that's useful for you. So we would love your feedback. We'd also love your referrals. If you know someone that could benefit from the ideas, the content we're talking about on a regular basis, please go ahead and share.
All right, let's get started.
Yeah, let's start with you, because you, as usual, led off the Customer Service Revolution on week number 3. And I know we have a couple of clips of yours that we're going to review. And I think they're pretty interesting because, we know how important relationships are in all facets of our lives, whether it's at home, it's at work. And you put an interesting spin on it. And so why don't we start with your first clip?
Today, we've been forced into a virtual world. It is adding to these unintended consequences, which we call a relationship deficit. As we've been forced to practice social distancing, people have realized how much they crave human connection. Not being able to dine with friends, see family members, or interact with coworkers has put a strain on their human spirit. That is why the businesses that create an emotional connection will dominate going forward.
So it's interesting because we have talked about relationship deficits before due to technology, right? So it's not something that's necessarily new, but I feel like the impact of relationship deficits are now kind of multiplied because of social distancing, because a lot of workplaces are closed. So I think it's probably hitting more people than it did before, and it's probably hitting a lot of people a little bit harder than it did before.
Yeah, pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, the digital revolution was the fastest growing segment of any business, and now it's just taken off. I mean, we don't have an option, even if we wanted one before. So that relationship deficit is really leaving an opportunity for businesses and people to step in and be the one person that gets to know you. Is the one person that cares. And it was so cool because, without knowing it, it's kind of a similar theme that Jesse Itzler talked about in his presentation.
Right, for sure. And we will get there shortly. John, there's another thing that we talk a lot about, again, pre-pandemic, and that's empathy and how important it is for service. We always say that compassion and empathy are the two most important words when it comes to providing great service. And empathy is usually missing if you're not very purposeful about it. But you brought up another interesting topic about empathy today that we're going to share here in clip number 2.
Talk about empathy fatigue. Empathy fatigue usually occurs in industries that constantly deal with customers who have high emotional pain, like funeral homes, behavioral therapy, and oncology. However, with today's world, every business is dealing with customers who have high stress and anxiety, which results in our employees feeling emotionally and physically drained, leading to a diminished ability to empathize or feel compassion for others. This is why, as leaders, we have to constantly be helping our employees re-energize, rejuvenate, feel appreciated, and understand the critical role they play in their customer's day, which not only results in the customer feeling better, but the employee will be less likely to burn out.
Such an important lesson there. And I can share with you, and you know this, John, I can share with our audience. I've been doing some great work with the wonderful folks on at Flagler Health Plus in St. Augustine, Florida. They're a hospital and a health system at multiple locations. And they talk about empathy fatigue a lot, especially on the care floors where they have nurses and doctors. And you nailed it when you talked about leaders need to make sure that they're focused on that they're allowing their teams to hit that reset button. Sometimes it's a 5-minute walk. Sometimes it's a 5-minute break. It's a chance to just go sit down and do something different so that they can go back and then get back to giving their all to whoever that next customer, that next patient, whatever it is they're facing next.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that go to this, Dave. It goes back to week 1 when we talked about helping our employees and ourselves, deal with this and stay positive and not get sucked into the, doom scrolling and doom surfing and talking about it and, being an escape. And I think, when you're an escape and everyone, you don't have to, it doesn't, today, it's not only the hospitals. Everyone we're coming in contact with is, mentally exhausted, similar struggles. Very few people have the bounce in their step where they're like, this is a fantastic time in my life. And, so we have to, know that we're starting at a lower scale on the average attitude morale scale and try to be that escape for them. And if we're that escape for them, it's going to be for us versus allowing it to go down that black hole. We go with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes me think of a lot of organizations out there that, just kind of trade hours for dollars, as we say, and they don't see themselves as a support system for their teams. And people that are in that type of organization are probably really suffering right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're 100% right. And that's also to the point that you make so often about, are you showing how much you appreciate the work that your employees are doing and making them feel appreciated, and showing them the big picture impact that they're having? Because without all that, it is, as you say, trading hours for dollars, and that's not fun. That will only last a little while, and that you'll burn out.
Yeah, it's not fun for the employee and it's not good for the organization. That's for sure. So the next clip we have from you, John, I think is a great one because we always talk about the importance of actively listening and being present. And you give in this clip almost another tip of how to do that, what to be listening for. Let's listen to the clip.
All about finding the conversation gift. There is a gift in every conversation. If you look for it, you will see it. Many times it could be a link to an article or video of a topic we discussed, an introduction I can make, or some great restaurant suggestions for their upcoming trip.
So I love that because if you're reminding your team members of looking for that conversation gift, right? It's almost making them detectives. It's very similar for them looking for secret service, customer intelligence, and really makes them pay attention and find what that gift is that they can really act on. And of course, put into the CRM, share with others, make sure that we use it for the next conversation, et cetera, whatever it is in your particular business. But any tool that can help our teams be more present and more actively listening, especially in these days of all the distractions we have when people are working from home and all the devices at their disposal. I mean, that's a powerful thing.
Well, it's taking what most of our followers have learned from us over the years of the Ford family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And it's evolving it to, tracking that and hoping that during this conversation, you give me something. And, 9 out of 10 times, I don't even have to ask you. You might say, hey, John, if we're client service provider, you might say, John, I got to wrap this up by 4:00 because I'm taking my daughter back to college, or me and my wife are celebrating our anniversary, our 10-year, 20-year, whatever that may be, just in the midst. Or it could come up that from an expertise standpoint, you're referencing that your company needs something, and I'm like, oh, there was a great article in the Harvard Business Review or a great podcast. And so those are all the conversation gifts that as soon as we hang up, I can send you a link to that article, buy you the book, whatever it may be.
Yeah. And, you just made me think of something in my personal life, too, that I've noticed. I get exposed to a lot
anniversary coming up?
I do pretty soon. It's quickly approaching. So thank you for that. That's a conversation gift right there. But what I have noticed is when you talk about sharing those things and giving people a link, there are a lot of podcasts out there, and some are great. And I get bombarded with podcasts, whether it's in my email or maybe they just get, sent to me as a suggestion in my Facebook feed or whatever. But I find myself when someone verbally tells me, hey, I like this podcast, you should check it out. That's when I listen to it, right? That's when I say to myself, this probably has some value. So I think to be that type of person, to recommend those things and to advocate for somebody is really, really powerful.
Yeah. Dave, I just remember, we were just on a call with someone and you hung up and sent them a book on it. I remember on the call, you asked them if they had ever read it, but I think it was a running book, wasn't it?
Yeah, the book is called Kicksology, and it's all about the science of why we buy the running shoes that we buy and all the science and effort that goes into creating them, all the different looks and styles. I'm kind of a shoe geek, so I found it fascinating, and I got a sense from our conversation that the person we were speaking to was a little bit of a shoe geek as well. Yeah. He hadn't heard of the book, and I said, you got to check this out.
And then you sent it to him, I believe, which was, I'm sure, a great surprise. So, you shoe geeks got to, stay together.
That's right.
All right. So our next speaker that day was the one and only Darren LaCroix. Man, Darren's story, and again, you interviewed him on a previous podcast, and he really went into things of, going from the open mic night where, he was almost booed off the stage and the MC told him, don't quit your day job, to becoming the world champion of public speaking and winning that award. And a lot of us on the DiJulius group have taken training from Darren, and he's a speaker. He coaches. And so we were so lucky to have him for our audience to help them. His title was to revolutionize your online meeting.
Yeah. And before we get to his clip, one cool thing about Darren that I realized, it doesn't matter if I'm sitting in one of his sessions and going through his training, or if I'm interviewing him for our podcast, or if I'm just having a conversation with him in a hallway at a conference, which happens fairly regularly. I always learn something from him. He always has something to share, and he's out there all the time saying, hey, this works for me. This is a best practice. Go try it. He fits so well into our CS Rev community, because we have a community of people that want to share, that if something's working for them, they want to share it with others in hopes that it works for them as well. And Darren's in the same boat. That's how he runs his business. That's how he runs his life. And so I always pick up a new tip from Darren. He's great.
Yeah. So, Darren came out of the gate and bluntly said, boring loses business and you have to be unforgettable. And virtual is different, which we've all found out sometimes the hard way, that you can't just do what you do in a live audience, physical live audience, over virtual. So Darren gave 3 secrets to running more engaging online meetings. Let's listen to the first one.
Secrets to running more engaging online meetings. Ready? Let's do this quick. Number 1, virtual dulls connection. So we've got to overcome that. You've got to master the tools to make it personal again.
So what did you find from that?
Well, he shares so many great things, and a lot of times they're right in front of your face, but you don't realize it. And so we heard this from Darren really when we were starting to move all of our things to virtual, all of our workshops, because we're doing a lot of them virtually now. We picked that up from Darren. He shared that with us, and we went out there, and thanks to Jess on our team, who kind of led the research, we learned Zoom frontwards and backwards. That was our particular platform. And so we learned it frontwards and backwards. We learned how to use all of the tools, how to engage using all those tools. And he's absolutely right? You can't experience something in your platform, let's say Zoom, for the first time while you're with your audience, right? That just doesn't work. And so you need to make sure that you know everything. So if you're out there and you're using a platform, make sure you know everything that it does. Make sure you know the shortcuts. Make sure you know how to use any of the engagement tools. So many of them have polling or breakout rooms or other ways to engage your group. Make sure you know all those tools, and don't just show up there and pretend that you're all in a conference room and you're not, because it's not going to work.
Yeah. Focusing on your friends behind the lens, making friends behind the lens. And one of the key takeaways that I got from him that he shared here, but I've heard him say it before, is backgrounds can be distracting, from poor lighting to your audio to what I'm trying to see in the background on your bookshelf or pictures, or all those things can take away from you, and you want to be the most important thing that your customer audience is listening to.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that he shared that really stuck with me is when he talked about the fact that you can't persuade, entertain, or educate without feeling that connection. And like we just said, it's harder through that screen as opposed to being in person, right? So I think the first one, you can't persuade without a connection. That makes sense. That resonates with a lot of people. Yeah, I can't get you to join my side until we're kind of on the same page. But it really made me think when he said entertain and educate, right? Because those things happen all the time, and you can't expect yourself to be effective if you don't have that connection, if it's missing.
Yeah. Let's listen to Darren's second secret to running a more engaging online meeting.
Secret number 2, avoid the biggest mistake, not keeping your audience engaged. Flow matters.
Flow matters. So he starts talking about pace elements here. Can you help our listeners understand what pace elements are?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, quite honestly, it's changing it up, right? It's making sure that they see a different view, that it's not just you. If it's a meeting and you're presenting materials, it's not just you lecturing through the screen and you're not changing your tone, you're not changing the view. So it's using those tools, like he said in tip number 1, making sure that you're pausing for a breakout, making sure that you're getting feedback and utilizing it. Sometimes it's as simple as changing the perspective, right? So you might want to change your camera angle. You might want to step to a different wall and have a different view of those folks that are looking at you. Sometimes it's very simple things, but you can't just stand there and do the same thing in a 45-minute presentation. You got to break it up into smaller chunks.
Love it. Love it. And Darren's final secret to running more engaging online meetings.
All right, secret number 3, use effective pace elements. Number 1, well-told stories. Not just stories, well-told stories.
And he goes on and gives so many more. Elicit emotion. 63% of listeners remember stories versus 5 remember statistics, which lends itself back to the great presentation we talked about in episode 25 on Mickey Williams' storytelling.
Darren referenced Mickey as well, right? He referenced some of the things that she shared. And if anyone does not remember, one of the things that Mickey shared that really stuck with me was the saying that data tells, but stories sell, and the difference there. And the data that Darren just shared that you just told us totally backs that up, right? People remember those stories more often than just the figures, the numbers, the data.
Yes. So Darren was just, he had just so much information, open with the relatable character and then go into the solution and find the, finish with the outcome and short and meaningful clips, asking attendees to participate, call on them, just using polls, breakouts. Sometimes it's obvious, but even I can forget to do all that because I just want to plow through content.
Well, we've all been there. If you present on a regular basis, sometimes you have a bad read of the room. Sometimes you feel like maybe I'm going too slow. I need to speed up. And that may not be the case at all. And so we need to make sure that we're still reading the audience, even though it's through a screen as opposed to the traditional way in a room that we're so used to. But you still can do it.
Dave, you say it so well. I think across the board, that's the number one challenge for us professional speakers is how hard it is to read the room. I mean, you just can't get that over virtual. So these pace elements, as Darren calls them, helps to spice things up, never, get, for the adult learner being, staying too long in one thing. Whether it's us presenting or showing a movie clip or whatever it may be, I think he really brought a lot of great stuff. Which brings us to the next amazing speaker, Dave Murray. Your title,
I know that guy.
Week 3 was crafting standards that drive internal and external excellence. Before we play some of your clips, can you give some context to what that means?
Absolutely. I love to. So in my presentation, I talk about something that some of our listeners may be familiar with, especially if they've been, if they've read your books, John, or if they've worked with us in the past. And it's a CEC, which for us stands for Customer Experience Cycle. And it's a great tool when you're focused on your external customers and creating standards for your team. And one of my clips will get into that in just a minute. But what we've been doing more and more with our clients is also using that tool internally. So not only are we focused on the external customer, but we also focus on things like those internal handoffs, right? Where's a handoff between, say, sales and service, which happens all the time in most organizations, and how does that sometimes negatively affect the customer? So even though there's not a direct interaction with the customer at that point, how can it negatively affect that customer's experience? Because it can a lot, right? It could be miscommunication, can be delays, whatever that looks like in your world. So it's taking it a step further and making sure that we're focused internally and have those standards internally as well as externally.
This presentation, Dave, you've presented a lot. I mean, over the course of your career at the Customer Service Revolution, I believe this was your highest rated ever. And that's saying something because they're always high related. And what's really funny, before I play clip one, is your nicknames are getting nicknames, right?
Yeah.
So, we start calling you Murray, and now everyone's calling you the Murr. And, it's just so funny how, nicknames, you get nicknames. So let's listen to your first great point here.
All-time favorite quotes is from author Ron Zemke, and it's very relevant to our topic today. Ron reminds us that your customer is whoever benefits from the work you do, or conversely, whoever suffers when your work is done poorly or not at all. In this session, we are going to focus on a tool that we call the CEC, which stands for Customer Experience Cycle. Traditionally, a CEC is very focused on external customer interactions. What are the most impactful interactions we can have with those external customers? And how can we make them even better? For us at the DiJulius Group, it's a focus on commandment number 3, creating non-negotiable standards. In order to do this, we dissect those interactions and look at them in 4 buckets. What are the things that we have to do in order to get the job done, or operational standards? The third bucket is what are those things that we can do to build rapport, build relationships, and just make it a better experience, or our experiential standards. And number 4, where can we give autonomy to surprise and delight and go above and beyond?
So Dave, there's a lot there, and it's so important. I mean, this is what really gets to the crux of being a consistent business that people can rely on, that is not dependent on who you get, or if the manager or general manager or the owner are on site, or what location you go to. So you want to talk a little bit about that, Dave?
Yeah, it's pretty simple, John. If your organization does not have a CEC, it's safe to assume that you are not providing a consistent experience to your customers, because they don't have the tools. Your team doesn't have the tools to deliver that consistent experience. So that's what a CEC does. It creates those standards. And as I referenced in that clip you shared, some of those already exist, right? Some come right out of a SOP, a Standard Operating Procedures Manual, and those are your operational. So we want to focus on those and make sure if they're important that they are indeed getting done. But then the next 2 columns are so important. The experiential, where can we add to the experience that we're delivering? And sometimes those things are so small. Sometimes it's as simple as making sure that our team members are using that customer's name 2 or 3 times in the conversation. They're picking up on some forward information that you brought up earlier, some customer intelligence, and utilizing in the conversation. Again, some of them are really, really simple and doesn't always cost money or take additional time. It's just making sure that our team members have those standards to follow and to execute.
Exactly. And you then talked about something that is so overlooked by so many companies in so many different ways. You talked about the invisible service provider, and this has such a ramification that the customer feels, but also the lack of importance invisible service provider feels. Let's listen here.
In your organization, do you have invisible service providers? Those that are not necessarily seen by the customer, but their actions are felt. These could be team members in a plant or on a production line, or the team that processes orders once the sale has taken place. Think about the invisible service providers that you have in your organization and ask, do they understand who their customers are and the impact they have on those customers? Most likely, the answer is no. And their own stage or 2 in the CEC could be helpful.
So Dave, talk about that, because it's so important to get everyone to realize the part that they play. And in layman's term, that could be the cook, right? That could be the chef.
Yeah.
I mean, and we all know they might be the most important person but I know the acid test that I think people would be surprised at what their answers they'd hear if they went around and asked those invisible service providers who their customer are, they would say, too many would say, well, I don't have a customer.
Right. It happens all the time when I'm out there and we're out there in our consulting business and we're starting a new project and starting to meet people on different teams for the first time and going through our discovery process. We have interviews with people all the time that would fall under that invisible service provider category, and they don't know who their customer is. They don't feel that they have customers. I never see customers, so I don't have customers. And so I think it's really important that organizations take the time to explain to them who their customers are and show them, draw that roadmap. So the example that you just brought up, John, the chef in the back of the house who's prepping all the meals, his primary customer is the wait staff, right? He has to support the wait staff, get them what they need, get them out there so they can then go and support their customers, the actual customer, the paying customer. And that gets forgotten all the time, or really never explained in the first place. So I think it's really important for organizations to take the time to outline who the customer is that you support in your role, whether they're external or internal. A lot of times they're going to be internal, and then remind those team members how important their support of that internal customer is to the overall success of the business.
It reminds me, Dave, that we were just out to dinner literally last Saturday night, and it's a well-known restaurant in Cleveland. And the waitress, we said, I didn't want mashed potatoes with my meal. So, kind of double vegetable. No. And I'm like, why? She goes, the chef said he is too backed up, too many orders, no alterations. And, and to your point, who's going to pay the price? Or probably a lack of a tip for the service provider. And, it's funny, exactly what you're saying, where it trickles to ultimately the customer. But she wasn't actually being mean. She was, more gun shy of like, oh my God, like I got my head bit off. I know better not to go back there and ask again. And we're just looking at each other like, you can't leave mashed potatoes off a plate. Like that's going to slow them down, but that's not the bigger picture of it, and getting them to understand. And I think you do such a good job of it. And in your exercises, when you work with companies, making sure that they're involved in the workshop and we don't leave them outside of it. Well, they don't touch a customer, so they don't know. They still need to be here because, the server can't, whoever, the salesman can't fulfill the order without, shipping and fulfillment and support and all those other things.
Yeah, and you bring up one other great point too, John, that comes up a lot in our workshops is making sure that you have a work culture that supports doing what's right for the customer, right? So the example you just shared from the restaurant, they obviously need some work on that culture, right? The fact that server has no interest whatsoever in potentially going back there and asking your special request tells me a lot, right? That's part of their culture. And so that's a point where they need to work, because you need to make sure that people are comfortable asking those questions. You're not going to get to where you want to get with your customer experience if people are afraid to ask the question.
So Dave, we have two more amazing speakers to highlight. But before we do, I think this would be a great time for us to take a short detour and talk about two things that the DiJulius Group has that people are just really excited about. And those things are our Customer Experience Executive Academy. Class of 2021 is starting, I think in a few months. And we also, in January, are launching a brand new brand called CX Coaching. So, Dave, you want to talk about the Customer Experience Executive Academy and what that's like?
Sure, I'd love to. And it's a great point, John, because we've heard a lot of excitement about both of these. And then the obvious question is, well, which one's right for me? What's the difference? So CXEA, the Customer Experience Executive Academy, is all about making sure that our students come in and really receive the equivalent of their master's degree in customer experience. And the ideal candidate for that program is someone who's going to go back and either lead their company's CX, they're going to lead the experience across the organization, or be a part of that. And so we have some partners of ours that have sent one or two people. We have some partners that send a couple of people every year because they know they want that trained, well-educated customer experience guru in different parts of their organization, whether they're different department heads. So what it does at the end of the day is it turns that person into an expert on all the pieces of the DiJulius Group methodology. So whether you've worked with us as a client or not, maybe you've gone out and done some of these things on your own, you have at least one person, if not more, that truly understands the methodology, truly understands how to implement the methodology, and understands how to keep the methodology going, so that whatever your investment level is in experience, whether it's working with us or just maybe just the tuition of sending someone to CXEA, you're going to get that return because you're going to get the assurance that it's going to continue well beyond its creation point.
Yeah, the CXEA is fantastic. It's an annual course meeting that if you start, in 2021, and I think the next class starts in April of 2021. If you miss that, you have to wait till 2022. You come to Cleveland every quarter for 3 days, and we only accept 25 people per year in that class. There is an online course. So, and then we have the CX coaching, which is our brand new brand, which we are so excited about. And this is for if you're an entrepreneur or you want to be an entrepreneur, or you're in you're changing of careers and you've always wanted to own your business and you love customer experience and you love helping people fulfill their dreams. So the CX coaching brand stands for customer experience coaching, and we are teaching our methodology to coaches who then can build their own business and train their clients and build their business and help them do similar things that we've helped our amazing client list. So we're really excited about that. The first coaches camp is January of 2021, and that is already filled up. So the next one, I think, is going to be the second quarter of 2021. So make sure you visit thedijuliusgroup.com, and you can, there will be tabs and at the top on the training and the customer experience executive program. Again, like Dave said, that is for if you're, going to be a future chief experience officer and you want to be the champion in your company. That's perfect for you. It's that master's degree in customer experience. Or if you are on your own and you want to, really kick off a amazing 6-figure career helping other companies, create a world-class customer experience, then you want to go to cxcoaching.com and find out more information about that. Okay, Dave, let's come back to episode 26 of the Customer Service Revolution podcast, where we're wrapping up week 3 of the Customer Service Revolution conference. And our next speaker is one of the speakers I call a sleeper speaker. And what I mean by that is we had 20 speakers presenting this year and every year. And, they're all these well-known, highly sought-after, best-selling authors and just subject matter experts. And I just have always loved to do this every year, where we find one or two up-and-coming rising stars who are not well-known yet in the speaking industry, but we know that they are gonna be, and we like to, help them, catch them while we can still afford them. And and so our first one, who's our next speaker to highlight from week 3, is Dr. Paul Bizjak. What did you like about Dr. Paul?
Well, he presented so well, and his topic, wellness, is always important, right? It's always a good time to listen to wellness advice, listen to wellness tips. It's always good to focus your energy on that. But as we said in the beginning of our podcast today, I mean, it's probably more relevant now than ever before for so many people as we're sitting here in 7 or 8 of this global pandemic, and our lives have changed and we can't do the things that we used to do. So you could really make the case that what he's talking about in this particular episode is probably more important now than it ever has been before.
It really is. And his title was It's in You, Uncovering True Health and the Life You Were Designed to Live. And this first clip is just hilarious and aha. And I love it. Let's listen to it.
In a family sitting around a dinner table and little Johnny's giving potato chips to the dog. Hey, Johnny, don't feed those chips to the dog. It'll make him sick. Those are for you, honey. What? Do you see the disconnect? We understand that those potato chips will make the dog sick, but somehow they don't hurt little Johnny. See, 80% of Americans have one chronic illness, adults, and roughly 50% have 2 or more.
I love that, right? Don't give the chips to the dog. It'll make them sick. Those are for you.
Yeah. That's a statement that's probably uttered in households on a pretty regular basis. And when you think about it, there are some issues there. That's for sure.
Yeah. And then, the startling fact that he gave 80% of Americans have at least one chronic illness and 50% have 2 or more.
Yeah, that's a staggering statistic right there. That's a little scary. And, he's going to go on here in a minute in some of these clips to expand on that a little bit and share what you can do. But I think the bottom line of his talk, and it says so right in his title, is the solutions are under our control. We just have to focus on them.
Yeah. I mean, and he talks about that. And listen, whether it's customer service or diet or wellness, it's common sense, but it's put in a digestible way that people can, start making progress. And as Dr. Paul says, it comes down to the big 4 of our lifestyle choices. Let's listen.
It's good old boring lifestyle changes. It boils down to the food you eat, the exercise you do, how you manage your stress, and how you sleep. These are the big 4.
The food you eat, the exercise you do, how you manage your stress, and the sleep you get. Love it.
We all need those reminders. And I'm pretty certain that there's a lot of people out there that may be good at 2 out of the 4, maybe 3 out of the 4, but there's probably not enough of us that are focused enough on all 4 of those big 4. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to really think about each and every one of those.
Yeah, with this, it always reminds me, we talk about what's more important to building a world-class customer service organization, the hiring of new employees or the training you give them. And obviously, at the end of the day, it's both, right? I mean, you can't achieve one without the other. And, it's the same in wellness, right? What's more important, the diet or how well you eat or your workout? Well, it's both. You're not going to achieve the lifestyle that you want to have or the best version of yourself if you're not addressing both. And maybe in this case, all 4 of these, the food you eat, the exercise you do, the stress you're managing, and the sleep we're getting.
Yeah, if just one of those 4 is out of whack, John, then you're not going to be your best. It's that simple.
Yeah, they usually spiral and affect the others, right?
Yep.
All right, I love this next part. This was a new word I had never heard before, or a new term.
You don't know, presenteeism is being physically at work, but unable to fully perform your duties. These lifestyle diseases, chronic conditions, according to a study published in the Journal of Occupational Environmental Medicine, account for roughly 2 to 9 days of lost days per employee per year. And that didn't surprise me, and I'm sure it doesn't surprise you. But what did shock me was that presenteeism associated with these conditions resulted in an astonishing 41 to 91 days lost per employee per year. And that's just work. What about presenteeism with your significant other, your kids, your hobbies, life?
So that's pretty scary right there. And I had not heard the term presenteeism either before this. And I've heard of the concept before. We talk about it, John, that we know that sometimes when we have poor engagement in our organizations, that some people technically quit, but they keep showing up, right? But this is taking that a step further. This is people that might be dedicated, that might love their jobs, but they also might be physically unable to do all of their job because of their wellness or lack of wellness. And so whether it's physically unable or maybe it's brain fog or whatever is the cause, it's a major, major problem in corporate America today.
Yeah, I mean, we're all well aware of absenteeism, but presenteeism, and the really big part of that is, well, not only the lack of productivity that you're bringing to work, but the lack of presenteeism you're bringing to your relationships. I mean, they all have a significant cost.
Absolutely.
All right, that brings us to our last speaker, Mr. Jesse Itzler. Jesse is a crazy man, best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author, started several companies and has sold them. And his title of this presentation was Building Fanatical Customer Loyalty. And I have heard, I don't think I've ever seen Jesse speak before. I've read his book, Living with a Seal, and just love his energy. But man, did he just bring it.
He sure did. He had the chat room buzzing. People were really interested in what he was saying and wanted to hear more. They were asking each other questions, talking about how they were going to use some of his tips. He really shared some great feedback. So let's get to clip number 1.
I had a very interesting life. I was a kiddie pool attendant. I sold celery and carrot sticks door to door. I sold meat, chicken, and shrimp from a car. I had a t-shirt company. I wrote jingles and theme songs, and literally just a couple of, and I slept on 18 different couches. 18 different friends put me up on their couches as I bounced around couch to couch. And just 3 or 4 years after that wild ride in my life where I was experimenting with all these little businesses, we literally started this jet company. And it just goes to show you, and it reminds me that we're all just one idea away from changing the trajectory of our life. Whether you're in business now or starting a business, we're just one away from one customer, one referral, one idea, one tweak in the package or product that can completely change where we are or where we think we're going to be today. And that happened to me.
Slept on 18 different couches.
I think we've all probably been there at one time or another where we were sleeping on a friend's couch. Maybe it happened twice. 18 that's a lot. Like you're putting some effort into that. The other thing that he mentioned that really stood out to me that I'd never heard before is selling shrimp from his car and selling carrots door to door. You don't hear those two professions very often, but obviously the big takeaway from that first clip is the point that he made at the end, where he says we are all just one idea away from changing the trajectory of our lives. That's all it takes, is that one idea to do that. And that's pretty incredible when you think about it.
All right, let's listen to his next clip, which was one of the highlights of the entire customer service revolution.
I've done this with all of my customers my entire life, these 3 things. And if you do them, they will radically change the way your customers perceive you and help you. And that is, I call them the 3 C's. I compliment, I congratulate, and I console. Any opportunity that I have with a customer to compliment them, congratulate, or console them, I do. And even if they don't give me a reason, I always want to get into their life and build deep, meaningful, authentic relationships. So my customer is rooting for me so much that they want to give me referrals.
Compliment, congratulate, and console. Love that.
Yeah, so powerful. And to be looking to where you can do that. He mentioned in there, he looks for that, right? He doesn't just wait for something bad to happen to console. He digs, he looks, he's making sure that he's present. He's asking the right questions. And when that opportunity pops up, he's there. He's ready to go with one of the 3 C's. And that was really, really powerful. Our audience really enjoyed that tip.
Well, and that goes back to, the conversation gift. That's what compliment, congratulate, and console. You're looking for those opportunities. And he said it best, building deep, meaningful, authentic relationships, which then gets your customer to root for you. They want to give you business.
Right.
Something else he shared that I used to do, and I just love this because it got me back into it. Literally in the past 7 days since I heard Jesse say this, I have been doing this again. And it's such a best practice that you don't hear often this way.
A lot of people talk about morning routines, and I'm a big believer in morning routines, but I'm a much bigger believer in evening routines. My day starts the night before. I'm not good enough to just wake up and wing it, like, oh, what am I going to do today? I invest 5 or 10 minutes the night before, and I map out exactly what my day looks like.
Evening routine. And it literally takes a few minutes, but, from everything from what time am I going to get up to, what's my exercise going to be? And, maybe you have a goal in there. Maybe you're going to try for a PR or, an extra 15 minutes or who knows to, what's my, top 2 things I got to get done tomorrow. It's so simple. I actually heard on a Tim Ferriss podcast, him talking about this as well, that some people will sleep in their workout clothes to make it easier. So all they have to do is roll out of bed and put their shoes on. Like, it's a funny thing, but hey, whatever helps you, be more successful at doing it.
Well, I love the concept of evening routines because, as Jesse mentioned when you started that clip, John, a lot is made of morning routines, and there's some proven benefit to morning routines. They don't work for everybody. And so some people were just kind of automatically left out of that. I know in my situation personally, my morning has a lot to do with what my kids have going on. And sometimes it's out of my control. So my routine can be different. Sometimes I'm not home and I have to be at a client at 7:30 in the morning. So whatever my normal routine is not going to happen. But you always have that 5 or 10 minutes before you go to bed, no matter where you are. And so I really like that thought. I think it's an opportunity for the rest of us. I also like the fact that he mentions that he only needs 5 to 10 minutes. It's not a huge investment. It's not like you're trying to carve out time and have to give something back in order to make this time. Anyone can find 5 or 10 minutes to start to plan what needs to happen the next day.
Yeah, and a little silly habit I've done is I have in my evening journal that I do my planning for next day, and I just leave it on my pillow, so it's in the way of me just jumping in bed and trying to get some sleep. He said, now's the time where you take inventory of your business, friends, associates, who cares and who's showing love, and vice versa. And he ended his presentation with this quote that was just so powerful.
This is a time to be remembered as a great human. This is a time to separate and stand out from all the competition. This is an opportunity right now in this time to rise above everyone and be remembered as a great human.
This is a time to be remembered as a great human. I love that.
Yeah, so great. It's such a great reminder. It's always a great reminder, but especially now, right? As he alluded to in some of his previous comments as well, this is a time to be checking on people and seeing how people are doing and just taking that time, especially now, to be mindful of it, to be purposeful and really spend that extra time. It's really important right now.
What a week. Week 3 was incredible. Just so many pearls of wisdoms that complemented each other. These speakers really had me inspired, and I'm excited about week 4 of the Customer Service Revolution, which is featuring another amazing lineup of the Murray, the Tom Bilyeu, founder of Quest Nutrition and founder of Impact Theory, an NCAA champion head coach, Tom Ryan, and the authority, the trust authority, David Horse-Auger. And myself are going to be speaking week 4, October 22nd, and will be part of our episode 27 Customer Service Revolution podcast, where we'll be recapping all their amazing takeaways.
Yeah, I already can't wait for week number 4. If the trend continues, John, it's going to be as good, if not better, than the previous weeks, which is hard to imagine. The other thing that's really hard to imagine when you think about it, all these great pearls of wisdom, as you mentioned, all these great nuggets, all these tips, and it's all happening in about 2 hours time on a Thursday afternoon if you look at each week. And it's just so much great information in such a short amount of time. So this year's Customer Service Revolution Conference, virtual edition, has been amazing.
And if you're listening to this podcast before November 30th, you can still listen to all 5 weeks of the Customer Service Revolution Conference by going to the customerservicerevolution.com, and you can register and you'll be able to watch all 5 weeks, every speaker we've been talking about up until November 30th. So if you have that, we highly recommend that we're not doing them justice. They just crushed it. And the amount of time we have, we're only covering about 5%.
Well, the other thing too that you bring up, John, I talked about just now how it's a jam-packed 2 hours each week, and there's 5 weeks. But someone could sign up now, and then they could binge listen to everything all at once if that's what they like to do, as long as they do it in that month of November. So that could be a cool opportunity for some people out there.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up episode 26 of the Customer Service Revolution podcast, Dave, please tell our viewers if they've enjoyed this, what they can do for us.
Well, first of all, we'd love for you to subscribe, and you can find us wherever you go for your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you go, we're there. And then secondly, we'd love to hear your feedback. We'd love to hear what you think could be better, what you're really enjoying. And of course, whenever possible, go ahead and refer us. If you know someone that would benefit from hearing the content that we're talking about each week on the Customer Service Revolution podcast, please share that with your friends and colleagues, because if they could benefit, we want to be there for them.
Well, thank you, Murr, for another great episode, and I look forward to episode 27.
All right. As always, it's been great, John. I enjoyed wrapping up the last session with you. I'm already looking forward to the next time.
All right. We'll see everyone soon.